Hey, what's going on, guys? Dom the Movie Nerd here, and have you heard the good word? Game of Thrones is back! Well, not really, but the first official spin-off, House of the Dragon, is set to premiere next year on HBO, and that got me thinking about how Game of Thrones, the #1 most-watched show for a decade, just seemingly disappeared from the culture after that god-awful finale. And I wanted to find out why, which is why I'm proud to present the newest hit show from the Talkin' TV network, Talkin' Thrones, the new weekly show where myself and friend of the channel, Professor Pat Huber, get together to break down each and every single episode of this hit show. We've got focus character segments, we break down the lore, we go over some old reviews, all to get to the question of where did this show go wrong? It's a really fun time. You guys are not going to want to miss this. So head over to the Talkin' TV channel on YouTube and Spotify to check it out. We go live every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Audio goes up the following Saturday. It's going to be a really great time as we once again battle it out for the throne. All right, people, we're recording this on a Sunday morning. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning, which is kind of antithetical to the tone of this movie. But just given what we witnessed after watching the entire goddamn Halloween franchise up to this point, and now after watching this movie, I'll just be straight up and forward. This doesn't necessarily convince me that slashers are still any good. But, like, what's your take? What's your take before we get into Halloween Kills?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's sad when I have this awesome Mike Myers t-shirt. Halloween t-shirt.
Well, wait, Mike Myers or Michael Myers? Because you got to differentiate between the two now. Because I've already seen the memes going
true.
like
you guys
non-stop.
knew what I meant. And I'll just say this: this movie was. Well, we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot. Let's get into it.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. All right, Chris, I'm going to be honest, like, just first and foremost to get this started, as if I'm never not honest.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't really know where to go with this one because we watched every single Halloween movie up until that point, including the Rob Zombie ones. I think it's safe to say we were both pretty much looking forward to this movie. The first one, the first David Gordon Green one that came out about 3 years ago, was such a smash hit. That movie made so much more money than they ever had. But again, it goes along with the Blumhouse formula as far as, again, they make these movies so cheap and they're able to make bank off of them. And now this was kind of their, like, foray into, like, the nostalgia IP game that all the other studios were doing. And really, if we're being honest, it was kind of their only successful effort. But, like, before we get into this movie just in general, right, we talked about the entire history of the Halloween franchise. We've been watching each and every single goddamn movie up until this point. Everyone, for the most part, knows about our thoughts on the franchise. So first and foremost, right, because this is one of the few movies, surprisingly enough, that we did not really converse about in the moment in which it came out. What were your thoughts on the 2018 movie when it came out versus now?
Yeah, I didn't like it at the time, but I think it's pretty good looking back on it. It's fun. It was a good revival. I think now that I've seen it all, I have a little more perspective on the franchise and sort of its history. I think it did what H2O failed to do. I think it clearly was a smash hit. Audiences loved it. And I think it gave a lot of promise because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was watching our good friend Brando Critic. He did a nice little review of Halloween from 2018, like a first-time watch video. And I figured, all right, I don't really have time to watch the whole movie, but A, I can support a friend, and B, he's going to put some clips in it, and I'll remember what happened. And so I watched his video, and he was saying in that video that there's a third one coming from this new revival, whatever you want to call it. And I think
the third Halloween timeline.
I think that's great that there's a third movie coming because we literally had zero plot in this second one. So they have so much. The door is wide open. If this could have been the most genius second film of a trilogy ever written, depending on how the third one goes, because they covered nothing. We got nothing done. So the door is wide open. Like this is a writer's dream. Honest to God. Like, I would be, if it's like my first make or break, and I'm like, oh my God, like I just got handed a big franchise, dude, don't worry. Or girl, whatever. You can do anything, because nothing happened in this movie.
Wait. Okay. Well, first off, way to rip the Band-Aid right off. We haven't even gotten into spoiler free yet, but I don't know. My thoughts on the 2018 one. When I watched it, that was literally like there was kind of like that was like my introduction to the Halloween franchise. Because I watched the original movie like a couple weeks beforehand. Hey man, I told you.
No, I know. It's just sad. I spent the
first 20 years of my life not having watched a single horror movie, and then my first real experience with horror, which couldn't even count, is Scary Movie, which the parody of the parody ruined slasher movies for me forever and made it impossible for me to take them seriously.
Funny film, but doesn't count.
So then you get I watched the original Halloween. I thought it was good. I believe it was my first John Carpenter movie. I watched The Thing shortly thereafter and was blown away by it. And I saw the original Halloween. I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm sure this was amazing for the time, but this isn't necessarily my cup of tea. And after discovering that kind of the original Halloween was the inception for the whole slasher franchise, that's when I was like, oh, okay. It didn't necessarily ruin the movie for me, but it kind of took it down a few pegs as far as like the pop cultural landscape. So then you have. I know, obviously, that going in, I hadn't seen any of the other Halloween movies up at that point, so I know that going into the 2018 one, I'm like, okay, this one's wiping the slate clean. None of the other movies are canon now. Okay, cool. So I was able to kind of roll right from the original Halloween into the 2018 one. And you can imagine my shock when I would say I probably had a very similar reaction that you had to The Force Awakens, where I'm like, okay, this is literally just trying to do the same thing that the first one did. It's trying to capture the spooky vibe. It's not necessarily doing anything new outside of a few new jokes and a slightly updated cast for later on. I thought it was kind of the first installment in, let's call it the Blumhouse bad teen track, where Blumhouse had a record that really started in 2018 and making these really, really terrible teen movies like some other installments, Truth or Dare, the Craft remake, Freaky, the Black Christmas remake that we all loved so much.
I thought it was amazing. I thought that, side note, I think that movie was great. It was such a good time. It's like one of my best theater memories. And also, hey man, Black Christmas and Halloween are like some of the first slashers post Psycho. So, you can make fun of Black Christmas all you want, but we probably wouldn't
I will continue to make fun of that movie.
We probably wouldn't have Halloween Kills if
I will make fun of that movie until the day we die.
That's fine, but here's the thing, Dom. We both preach. No, you keep cutting me off. I'm getting this out. God damn it.
God.
We both preach knowing your history, right? That's something we do here on the podcast. You need to know the films that the shoulders of which the Titans this movie stands on. Titans? Well, Black Christmas.
Oh my God.
Was a slasher pioneer.
Dude, if Black Christmas had to walk so that Halloween Kills could run, fucking cancel my Blumhouse stock right now. I want to pull my money.
I'm with you on that.
I want to pull out my money right now if that's the case. Fucking, I am still mad at you and Pat for dragging me to that movie when I still remember wanting to see something else that weekend, and you two dragged me to that bullshit, and I'm still mad at you guys for that. But So I came out of that movie thinking, okay, this is fine, but it's not great. And then as I thought more and more on it, I'm like, this doesn't actually add anything, I guess. Because remember, too, I'm coming off of a year of Split and Get Out, right? That both came out in 2017. Both Blumhouse installments, both two revolutionary horror installments, both two movies that showed, horror movies can be more than the tropes. Horror movies can actually be like these really interesting, really engaging, genre-bending, thought-provoking, kind of interesting things. And then you get out this new Halloween movie, and I'm like, this is just David Gordon Green and Danny McBride paying lip service to Carpenter, which is cool. Don't get me wrong. I love that Carpenter now is just retired from filmmaking and is just making music, because his music still fucking rules. Like, that's the one thing that, for me at least, has consistently been like the best part about his movies. But
yeah, the score was it was where it should have been, I thought.
Yeah, but like I watched the movie and I'm like, okay, this is just, I'm like, wow, so this is now doing what Force Awakens did, but for slashers. So now slashers can't even market themselves off of, the horror aspect. Because again, in this age of IP and in this age of Marvel and superheroes, the only other genre that seems to be able to make money at the box office is horror. It's the literal only one. I don't know any other genre outside of the superhero movies that can actually get people to come out in the theater, especially in a post-COVID time. The irony of this being that because of them attempting to release Freaky in the middle of a pandemic last year, which again, I will still never I know that studios were desperate for money last year, but it's like, come on, guys, no one is going out to see this in theater. Take a cue from Christopher Nolan last year, how Blumhouse made the interesting decision, I'll say, to release this movie, Halloween Kills, both simultaneously in theaters and on the Peacock. But let me tell you something, Chris. This pulled an HBO Max in the sense that this was the first movie that I've seen where the streaming did not hurt it. It only helped it, because I went to my local theater opening night to start to watch this movie, and the shit was sold out.
Yeah, same with ours down here.
Sold out. It was crazy. And then so I ended up going home and watching it on the Peacock. And I think it's safe to say, I'm not going to speak for you, but I know I definitely made the right decision. I know I definitely made the right decision as far as watching on the Peacock. I felt so bad because I got a bunch of my friends together. We were all ready to go. It was going to be the same theater that I watched the 2018 Halloween in. And then I went home and we went back to our house. We watched it on the big TV, on the Peacock. And I'm like, at about 20 minutes in, I realized, oh no, this is gonna be. You know what? I'll save that because I feel like that's a good transition into our spoiler-free thoughts, just in general on this movie. I know you kind of summed it up nicely, but
well, I'll just
this
say
movie,
you were talking about the ticket price, and I think this movie should have been marked down. Like it should have been a reduced on sale film ticket, because that's the first thing I said when we walked out of that theater.
And
I was
my theater tickets are already cheap enough. So
I was like, when we walked out of the theater, I was like, yeah, I have Peacock. Why? I mean, cool. I just spent money I didn't need to spend. Like, this is a waste. Coming off of No Time to Die to this, I mean, come on, man.
Oh, yeah,
just not what you want. Not what you want.
Night and day. Literally night and day.
Not that there's, like, it's burning a hole in my pocket, but, like, every little bit counts when you're, like, a struggling podcaster, and it's like, damn, that wasn't worth it. So I think you made the right decision, point being.
Yeah, we ultimately made the right decision, unfortunately. Which, again, I guess, what does that say about this movie? So, I guess a little plot summary. So, this movie picks up immediately after the events of the original. It's kind of trying to pull a little bit of the original Halloween, too, which I'll get into some of my problems with this movie and just where it fits into the timeline chronology. But just as far as this movie goes,
first,
this movie
subscribe,
picks up.
Hit the like button, and turn the bell on for notifications, because we don't do that enough, and we already have an amazing community, so imagine if we did that more. So they're all free things you can do to help the show. Now, Dom, take it away, brother.
So this movie picks up immediately after the 2018 Halloween movie, right? They lit the fire. They left Michael Myers to die. It's Laurie, her daughter, and her granddaughter, who are both so inconsequential and boring that I'm not even going to bother to remember their names, other than the fact that her daughter is played by Judy Greer, who is continuing to be, who I'm officially, this is the official installment. It's been a long time coming for Judy Greer, about 5 or 6 years now, but I'm officially adding her to the list of actors and actresses that every time you see them in a movie, they officially become Hollywood kryptonite. Jai Courtney finally got off the list with the most recent The Suicide Squad, and Judy Greer has officially been added to it, along with Alex Pettyfer and a couple of other people. But yeah, so this movie picks up right after the events of the Halloween 2018, but not in the same location. Like, it actually takes like a decent amount of time before we get to like kind of picking up with Laurie and the fire and Michael returning and continuing to wreak havoc on Haddonfield. It starts off with like a couple different things. Like, immediately off the bat, you can tell that like David Gordon Green and Danny McBride have way more money to play around with, just as far as this goes. And they show, what is it? They show Tommy Doyle, portrayed now by Anthony Michael Hall, portrayed obviously in Curse of Michael Myers, which has been erased from the continuity by Paul Rudd. Obviously one of the original kids that Laurie babysat in the original Halloween. And again, it's just continuing to hammer home the nostalgia hype. It's like, oh, Tommy Doyle's there. Oh, the kid who bullied him is there. Oh, one of the other girls who he was also babysat with, she's there. Oh, Loomis's assistant who almost got attacked by Michael, she's there. And immediately off the bat, I'm like, oh no, this is where we're going. And that's before we even actually get into the plot. And I guess, for lack of a better word, if I had to pick like one thing to say about this movie, just in general, it's that I think it's trying to be a message thing. I think.
What message?
That's the best of. I'll get to that in a bit, but like, I think that's the best. I guess about like paranoia and like, you know, mob control and like letting, you know, I guess tribalism and groupthink dictate the decisions, especially when it comes to something harrowing like that.
If anything, that's an anti-Hollywood message, which is something I highly doubt Blumhouse would do.
Right, exactly. Which is why again, I feel like I'm grasping at straws with that. But again, I'm trying to do my best job as a critic here and try to apply like as much possible, like I feel like proper criticism, because like the problem is that this is made by two people who you can clearly tell love the originals like so much, like literally to the point, like again, like I even said it, like a big problem that I had with the 2018 was it felt like it was so trying to emulate the stylisms of the original, straight down to the fact that they literally had their own version of a Dr. Loomis character in that 2018 movie, you know, and unfortunately that kind of went nowhere literally. But I think I figured out what the problem with these movies are just as a whole, which is that David Gordon Green and Danny McBride are trying so hard to pay lip service to Carpenter without actually conceptualizing a story of their own, which is really kind of depressing, because everything that that they've done, that those two have done between, their contribution to the comedy genre in the late 2000s with Pineapple Express, right down to all of their different stuff that they've done for TV on HBO between Eastbound and Down, Vice Principals, The Righteous Gemstones, all that stuff has been great. And I'm not gonna lie, when I heard that they were doing the Halloween reboot last year, I was like, oh shit. Okay, this is a total 180, and I didn't see this coming from anywhere, but okay, I'd be interested to see Danny McBride's take on a Halloween movie, and I watched it, and I'm like, I don't even know what this is. And I think that's ultimately the biggest problem with these movies, is these movies have no identity other than being Member Berries movies. And I know that we talked a lot, that we debated a lot about that with Force Awakens, but I still stand by that Force Awakens at the time was trying to say something other than just being a blatant remake of Force Awakens. For the life of me, I have no idea what these movies are trying to say or accomplish. Like I said, I know I had the mob statement mentality as far as what this movie presented with how Tommy Doyle organizes the mob, but they seem to be consumed by their own paranoia and rather than their actual pursuit of Michael, because once again, Michael proves to just be able to avoid everyone and is literally proven invulnerable in this one. Don't get me wrong, we know we've seen some stupidity with Michael's invulnerability before, but I think this one takes the cake as far as jumping the shark with it. But I've rambled enough. What's kind of your take on that?
Well, I certainly think that Hollywood doesn't have the guts to put out something that's anti their messaging, especially at this point in time when you have people like Chappelle and Joe Rogan really doing their best to say, hey, we're done being censored by you, and we're going to say what we want to say because we should have our opinion too. So I don't think Hollywood has the guts to do something like this. So I would not attribute this film to that at all, because it had no plot. It had zero threads to the first film. I mean, so many things weren't picked up, so many balls weren't pushed forward, and so it's just, no, I disagree with that. You can make the case for it. I just don't think that it exists. In my universe, if it does exist, then awesome, but it doesn't make it a better movie either. If they're going against the narrative, it was still sloppy and frustrating, especially because I thought 2018 was actually, in my rewatch, a nice homage to what made the slasher genre, the film titled Halloween, obviously. It was a really cool callback to Carpenter. It felt like a love letter, and I thought, wow, we have something to build off of here. Not a perfect movie, sloppy at very many points, but fun, and it was a great watch in theaters for Halloween. I remember the night, the experience, and it was just a fun time, whereas this was just miserable. I was sitting there thinking about the money I spent on the movie, and I thought about the money I spent on the movie when I watched No Time to Die as well. But let me tell you, I was way more happier with my investment in No Time to Die than I was. I would have bought 90 tickets to this film with the way I'm feeling right now. This movie, I was like, hey, maybe we don't go to the diner afterwards. I'm trying to save some money here.
No.
We still did. We did the whole nine. But it's just,
if Chris is saying that we should go to the diner, that's a problem, because Chris's tradition is going to the diner after every movie.
I almost want a documentary about what happened, why this was so pitiful. But I do think this could be the ultimate undersell to what could be the greatest conclusion to a trilogy in all time, because again, they had no plot. Nothing happened. So it's you literally, the writers have free reign just to do whatever, because if they do something, it's already going to be better than nothing, which was this film. And so that's the third one's already going to be better, just by proxy of how the second one was.
I mean, the third one is already entitled Halloween Ends, but we already know, again, they've been mining this freaking IP for 40
it'll end for 5 years
now.
and someone else will pick it up again.
Exactly. They're never going to stop. They're never going to stop. They're going to keep Michael Myers invulnerable forever. We've gotten so many different explanations to his invulnerability that at this point I've just lost interest. I just don't care anymore. I remember that was my biggest thing after watching the original Halloween, and I hadn't seen all the rest of these movies. I'm just like, oh my God, just make it stop. But again, they literally can't kill it, because this motherfucker has been blown up, stabbed, had his head chopped off, fucking been trapped in a burning house, literally beaten down by an angry mob. Nothing can freaking stop this guy. Nothing. Literally, he has the power of God on his side. And I know they did the whole, they're trying to bring back the whole thing from the original of, oh, evil dies tonight. Evil dies tonight. It's like, guys, that doesn't make any fucking sense. You can't just say, oh, something is a force for evil. Like, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't compute. He has to have some sort of motivation. And
some reasoning for it. There was no connection
exactly.
there. And so I think we got to get into the next segment because I got to talk spoilers. I can't keep skirting around
Let's do
this.
it. Let's talk spoilers. That's actually where I was going to go with this. So.
Our next segment for you guys today is, or tonight, or whatever you're watching this, is how this the continuation from the first, how this continues on from the first. And I'll just say, it doesn't. Where is the plot point where the boyfriend and the girlfriend, he kisses her, he kisses another girl in the middle of their dance, and she just lets that go? It's like, I get it. Your dad just died. Your grandma almost just died. But also, like, you rush right into his arms. Like, you're trusting him. All this stuff just happened to you, and you're trusting him. You don't even bring it up once. Okay, really random. Tommy Doyle comes out of nowhere and just becomes like the hero, like the match to Michael Myers wanted to square up against him. Whatever. Like, this dude has a whole new confidence out of nowhere. All right, dude. Whatever. I didn't believe it. And then really, like, why'd you have to do all those firefighters like that? Like, arguably in our society, firefighters are the real heroes, man. They're rushing into burning buildings, and Michael Myers had to kill them all. But also, how unbelievable is it that firefighters would be like, oh, we're squaring up right now?
Yo, right? That scene happened. I'm like, oh, let's go. We're about to get some fucking Dominic Toretto, Deckard Shaw, like Fast and Furious endings, like sword fights or axe fights with this shit.
I didn't enjoy it. I thought it was dumb. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I thought we were in for a totally different movie.
I thought we were in for a totally different movie at that point. Then he just murders them all. I'm like, nope, okay, that wasn't happening. Way to blue balls me there.
And I see people tweeting about this film in a positive way, and I understand that I am just not of the hive mind. I don't know. Take it away, Dom. Because there's just so many ridiculous things in this movie.
So I'll tell you the first minute that I knew that we were in trouble with this movie. I'll tell you the exact scene. Besides the fact of, okay, so Chris, tell me what was the number one thing that you remember from the marketing from the 2018 movie? What was the number one thing you remember?
I don't remember anything. I don't watch trailers or stuff like that.
They said they were wiping every movie in the franchise other than the original out of context, right? Out of continuity. That includes the original 1981 sequel, the first Halloween 2. They said even that one was wiped out of continuity. Again, it's only the first Halloween movie that we have to play with. And then we have that elongated flashback sequence with the Thomas Mann as the younger version of the Will Patton character, again, who is a completely made up character, I'm pretty sure, obviously, because I don't think that character was in the original. I believe he was a retcon. Having him chase down Michael Myers and accidentally kill his superior, which again was so dumb. I'm like, is this trying to be a parody of a horror scene where they're hunting around the house for Michael, and then he just stands in front of the window for like 3 minutes before Michael comes in and starts strangling him? I'm like, okay, there's that. And then you have the bonus footage again. I'm guessing unused footage from the original of Dr. Loomis and them of arresting Michael.
That. I thought it was a nice touch. I thought they integrated it
well. That was cool. But I'll tell you exactly how that got undercut was in the next fucking scene. When you had a flashback where they used footage from Halloween 2 after they expressly said that was no longer in canon. So already off the top of my head, I'm like, okay, make up your goddamn minds. You can't just pick and choose from other movies just because you feel like it. It's either you stick with one thing or you stick with another thing, right? That's how I already knew that we were in trouble. That's before we even got into anything else. The second side,
and you know what's sad? Before we get too far away from some of the points you raised, I thought when we were living in 1978, the performances were 10 times stronger, and there was none of our leads. Better. I mean, Jim Cummings was a phenomenal little part in this movie, and just to only have him in the first act, because I had hope in the first act. I thought we were off to a good start. We were paying homage again. I said, okay, we kind of did that in 2018, but it could go somewhere still. The first act, there's always a chance to go somewhere. And once I quickly realized this is probably the movie that makes this statistic more than likely true, that, hey, this is now you can officially say Jamie Lee Curtis has acted in a hospital bed in 1/3 of these entire movies, I realized we were going nowhere. But at least in the first act, we had hope, right? I mean, I don't know.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'll tell you the second scene that I knew that we were in trouble, which was the firefighter scene. Oh, man, that scene, when he comes out, First off, just the fact, okay, so again, Michael is a blunt object that never speaks, but he's smart enough to hide in her weapon storage thing in order to avoid the fire before brutally murdering all the firefighters. But I can immediately tell the way in which he dished out, right? So you can tell the kills in the first one, they were very much Carpenter-esque. They were very slasher-esque. They were very much like kind of withheld. You saw the blood, but it wasn't like excessive. There was still like a class to it, for lack of a better word, right? There was a class of kind of like paying homage to slashers in that first 2018 one. That I don't know if you agree with me on that, but like at least that was my sense. This one, oh man, it's ironic too that like the rest of the franchise has gone out of its way to ignore the Rob Zombie movies, and that we literally just watch the Rob Zombie movies, because every time Michael killed someone in this movie, I thought I was watching like a Rob Zombie ripoff. Like this movie went full on exploitation at points, and I'm like, okay, what are they trying to do here? Are they trying to make this like horror? Are they trying to make this exploitation? Like, here's what, like I said, I give them credit. I give them credit for wanting to experiment around and wanting to try something new and wanted to go out of their way and like wanted to say, okay, we're not just paying lip service, but at the expense of everything else that happens in this movie. Like, I for the life of me, like, there's so many more characters in this movie, and half of them were expected to remember from the original that, like, were, like, bit parts that were only there for, like, one scene, and now we're supposed to have this tremendous, like, connection to these people. I'm like, first off, that's not how member berries works, just in general. I'm sorry.
It felt so forced in that regard.
Second off, the fact that they're still expecting us to care about characters that we can't even remember from the first one, because again, this movie picks up right after the original, but it's been 3 years since the original, not to mention the fact that we've lasted through a COVID year, so it feels like it's been 5 years since the original, because let's face it, COVID feels like an extra 3 years tapped on top of that. So we've got that on top, so we've got that to add on top of it, on top of the fact that, again, this movie is it's plotless. It's like you said, it's completely plotless. For the life of me, I have no idea what the story is.
Okay, so you agree with that? Because I know I've been saying that ad nauseum.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. 100%. Like, I literally, no joke, I remember after we watched the movie, one of my friends, we went out to a bar afterwards, and my friend even came up to me and said, hey, Dom, could you actually, like, be able to tell me the plot of that movie? And I'm like, what? We just watched it.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, but I don't really know what actually happened in it. I'm like, wow, okay, and this guy's not a movie guy for starters, and that should tell you something.
So I also didn't
go
with the normal film school crew, and they were all just like, I don't know, like how can we talk about this movie? Nothing happened. And I was like, okay, good. It's not just
like, what is there to talk about?
Me being like maybe snobby or elitist in my studies. I consider doing this podcast being a student of film over the past few years. I'm glad that I'm glad that it's not just me. People were like, it was still fun at times, but see, for me as someone who, and I'm sure it's frustrating when all you can say is it was still fun at times, because it's supposed to be fun at times. We're in Halloween season, the leaves are changing color, and it's a horror movie. Like, it's gonna be fun, but you want substance. Because I think the great horror films that we've watched and seen, and we've covered a few on this podcast, like the first Halloween, there's substance there. And it's like there was nothing here. Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. I couldn't agree more. I don't even know what genre this movie fits into. Like, is this a horror movie? Is this a slasher? Is this exploitation? I couldn't tell you. I really, really couldn't tell you. Like I said, the thing that I've admired about Blumhouse over the last couple of years is how they've really, I think, done a good job of expanding out past the traditional horror scope and actually, like, putting some, mixing and meshing some of their films up in a way that doesn't feel like schlocky and dumb. Like, say what you will about Freaky, but I do think that the comedy and the kills in that movie did work, even if, the plot and the dialogue didn't. The Belko Experiment, that's still a movie that absolutely blew me away the first time I saw it. Happy Death Day. Even a movie like The Hunt, which again was a movie that got screwed first by political pundits of all people, and then secondly by COVID. And then I watched that movie. That was literally the last movie that I saw in the theaters before the COVID lockdown last year. And I'm like, this movie's fucking hilarious as far as what it's going for. The Invisible Man. One of our favorite and only theater experiences of last year. What a time that was. Upgrade. Blumhouse, I think, has really, really been doing such a fantastic job with doing these little twists on the traditional horror movies and like kind of upping them to the next level. And so when you get something like this that fails so hard, but you can tell that like some of the experimentation is still there, because you can tell that like any other studio would never have let this movie be greenlit. Never, like obviously again, it helps that this is protected by the Halloween IP, but still, it's like I think that's probably what's the most depressing thing to me, is the fact that this isn't, for once, this is the first, I feel like, big failure of a movie that's not just a studio mandated thing. It is a failure on the part of the creators, which is so depressing, because again, McBride and David Gordon Green are typically people who know what they're doing.
I wonder what happened there. And it's like, this movie, you're right, it was such a failure to execute. And it's not even like the performances of Jamie Lee Curtis, who at this point is so locked into the character of Jamie Strode, and these other great actors who we've seen do good jobs in from 2018 especially. Like I said, that movie wasn't perfect, but it at least was fun and entertaining and offered something. This one, but it's a shame when even the actors can't make the best of a bad situation when they've been playing these characters.
Yeah.
For Jamie Lee Curtis for as long as she has, and for the new additions, at least with one film under their belt that was a box office success. It really does fall back on the core creation, the core team of McBride and I'm forgetting David Gordon Green, and it's so sad because it's just
you want something that's going to make you even more
happened?
depressed? David Gordon Green directed Pineapple Express.
I love that movie. I think that movie's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
exactly,
so unfortunate.
Exactly. It's so depressing. It's so depressing. And he directed majority of the episodes of the second season of Vice Principals, which is one of the best seasons
that show.
of televised comedy I've ever
think
seen.
that show's hilarious.
I've ever seen. That show's amazing. Amazing. Like, I still got to see what McBride does with the second season of Righteous Gemstones. But, like, again, these guys are so talented, and they know what they're doing, and they're so funny. And, like, I will say that, like, surprisingly enough, probably my favorite parts of the first 2018 one were the comedy bits, because that kid who is only there to like comment on the horror tropes when Jamie Lee Curtis's granddaughter's friend gets killed by Michael Myers was fucking hilarious.
We cut
And
out
the scene
everything.
with the kid,
I mean, I get it. It's the same night, and he grew up, so he kind of had to go. But it's just unfortunate that we had nothing that could have replaced it. Because here's the thing I think really about this at the end of the day. It's like, I don't just want to be that negative Nancy who keeps going on and on and on about how bad this movie was, but I genuinely can't find anything good to say about it. Other than that, like, the name is very fitting. Halloween Kills killed my Halloween buzz. Like, I had my whole babysitter rewatch lined up. I was gonna probably watch a couple obscure ones that people have been talking about for a while. I think I mean, I'm out of the mood now. We have 2 weeks left to go in this month, and I'm over it. Like, I'm all horrored out.
Do you remember,
Last year, every night I was grinding on a horror film, a TV
night was
show.
Amazing.
This did
well, because we didn't have
if
new
there's
movies.
one thing
Because
this
the Babysitter
killed-
Killer Queen was the only new movie that we had last
But I'm saying,
year.
like, I went back and watched some classics. I watched some indies. I was all about horror all month. And now Halloween Kills, they killed something. It killed my wanting to participate in this spooky season, which is a bummer.
Do you remember when the Babysitter Killer Queen made our top 10 best movies of last year?
It's a great movie. I can't wait to rewatch it.
Oh man, I love that movie, but that's still ludicrous to me how that happened.
Yeah.
But again, only on this podcast will you find stuff like that happening.
Speaking
so,
of
like,
this podcast, if I may, Dom, I just want to tell him a quick statistic. While there is a statistic floating out there that Jamie Lee Curtis has apparently been in a hospital bed for 33% of the Halloween franchise, did you know that also 33% of all people who view our content aren't subscribed? And that's insane, dude. Because if we get that number up, the growth is going to be astronomical. So all we're asking is two humble podcasters, living day to day, just please hit the subscribe button, hit the like, turn on the bell so you never miss when we post content. Like our Halloween top ranking of all films next week. It's free. All you got to do is...
It's coming, people.
It's coming.
It's coming. It's coming this week.
It's coming this week. It's free. Just hit the bell, subscribe, hit the like button, and we hope to keep seeing you as we will be indefinitely putting out future episodes. Dom, what topic did you want to jump into next? I feel like we kind of already spoke a bit.
I mean, we did kind of speak on this a little bit, but like again, I'm truly at a loss. Like, where does this fit into the horror genre? Like, is this exploitation? Is this kind of like, obviously it's not sci-fi horror,
It's not
obviously,
exploitation.
but like,
what are they exploiting?
Again, Well, the biggest thing about the Halloween franchise, just in general, is the fact that like it hasn't necessarily remained relegated to the slasher genre. Like obviously that's how it started, but I think it's kind of grown outward, obviously, as the franchise has continued on. You know, you had Season of the Witch, which I think was way more of like this really interesting like sci-fi horror, you know, kind of claustrophobic paranoia mystery thriller than anything else, really. Then you had 4 and 5, which, say what you will about those movies, I thought those movies had some really interesting statements. I thought 4 did a much better job on like kind of like the whole mob mentality take on it than this movie did, definitely. Then you have Curse of Michael Myers, which was just, I don't even know what that movie was, but that movie was just incredible. It was just absolutely incredible. Then you had the 90s ones, which were trying to do the whole Scream thing, where they were trying to be like, oh, we're kind of like self-aware, trying to do like, oh, these self-aware horror parodies, even though these are just, you know, more of like just really just typical like schlocky bad teen comedies that also happen to feature Michael Myers. And then you had the Rob Zombie ones, which just went full-on exploitation, but because Rob Zombie, I like to think after those 2 movies, is a master of exploitation and really knows what he's doing. I think was actually able to add something really new and really interesting to the Halloween franchise and to the character of Michael Myers in a way that these 2 movies have just not, for me, just in general. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, I guess, where does this movie stand within the horror franchise, within like kind of the greater overall window of horror? Because like we talk about horror a lot and kind of how it's evolved, how it's shifted, how it comes down a lot to people's perception, how for the longest time people only ever regarded horror as like B-level tier entertainment. They never regarded it as like truly like well-worthy, you know, entertainment, like I guess worthy of awards, for lack of a better word. And now obviously we've seen this massive shift in the last couple of years, especially thanks to streaming, you know, especially with the emergence of streaming services like Shudder and everything. But like, I guess my confusion with this is I truly don't know where this movie stands. Like this movie, it doesn't feel like a horror movie. It doesn't have, for the most part, any jump scares, like at all. The kills are not slasher kills. They're just gruesome exploitation kills. Like Michael, like fucking crushes people's eyeballs in this. He blows up people's heads. He smashes people through walls. He strangles people. The end of this movie is literally him getting up after taking 6 bullets to the chest again and getting beat down multiple times and just fucking slicing and dicing an entire mob of people. He's like, he literally, I can't even say that like he's got the Unstoppable Hulk thing, because Tyler Mane to me did that way better than this guy did, you know, playing Michael Myers in this movie. Also, just a quick side note, why is it that when they take off Michael Myers' mask, they're trying to make him look like Lee Van Cleef? Like, was that also supposed to be an homage? Because if they're trying to still homage Carpenter there, it's like wrong Carpenter franchise, because that's Escape from New York, not Halloween. So that threw me off just in general.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it needs to fit anywhere. I think some movies are just bad, and they
because it's good because it doesn't.
Yeah, some movies are just bad, and you also don't need to, I think, always label art like that. I mean, it's still art. There was still some creative, fun moments in this film. I thought some of the kills were pretty cool. It's just, it's nothing. It's just, it comes and it goes. I think it's going to be one of those blunders, and horror seems to be one of the genres with how long these IPs run for, that there's a lot more, you know, stains on the resume than spots you want to boast about for some of these franchises. Example being the Scream TV show for that franchise. I mean, there's just some things you want to forget about, and this is certainly one of those movies. Try and make a fun night out of it is what I say. Get all your friends together, but watch this review first to the end, and a bunch of other people who are probably saying the same thing. I feel like this is one of the times that we're even lining up with all the big YouTube shills and people who just get paid to say they like movies that they actually don't, because I feel like if you have any sense of integrity as a critic, you can't say you like this, so there's no reason in trying to give it a label that offers it any sort of respect or redemption. It doesn't deserve that. It just simply came and went for me, and it's another one of the bad movies that I'm struggling more to figure out my worst list of the year than I am my best list of 2021. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I will say, so this movie doesn't quite make my worst, only because, again, this is kind of fits into the period. I mean, I don't know, because there's always that one movie per year that's so bad that it's good, that it kind of fits into my list. Because I will say, if I can add any bit of positivity to this list, right? It's the same thing that I gave Freaky last year when that came out, which is I hated Freaky for the most part, but Vince Vaughn and the kills in that movie saved it for me. And I will say that while definitely doesn't do that for this movie, because again, the dialogue and the script just given to the characters is fucking atrocious. Like I heard the lines coming out of their mouths, and I'm like, this feels like a 6-year-old doing a parody of Halloween. That's how bad this dialogue is. And like it had all the same repetitive, terrible dialogue that I've heard in so many other bad horror, bad just installments and franchises in general. And friggin' like I don't know, man. I don't friggin' know. I don't know how to feel about this movie. But the kills were awesome. Like every time Michael Myers did kill someone in this movie, because it wasn't doing like the slasher thing where he's gotta hide and he's gotta make his appearance unknown until the absolute last minute and he's gotta do the jump scare. There was none of that in this movie. He just came out and he went full on force. And while again, this movie is the second one where I'm like, okay, I'm starting to question some of McBride and David Gordon Green's like motivations as far as like, you know, Michael Myers victims, certain of them, like, well, because Michael Myers, I think this one, if anything, I'm not gonna say did the best as far as like showing like that Michael Myers just will not hesitate to kill anyone, because like, okay, so he killed a kid in the last one, but he leaves the Will Patton, Thomas Mann character, the kid, I should say, of the kid version of the bully of Tommy Doyle alive. It's like it makes no sense. It's like pick a lane and stick with it. It's like you can't have Michael Myers either got rules or he has no rules. You can't have it both ways as far as that goes. But the kills were awesome, and every time Michael did kill someone, it legitimately like made me twist and squirm in my seat. Like I was paying attention and I was engaged. I will say that about like that's if I can give one positive note towards this movie, I will give it that, because literally this movie had nothing else going for it. Again, it's so sad because the first one was touted as this homage and ode to Laurie Strode and like the PTSD that she's carried with her, and now the whole first movie is all about whatever, how nobody believes that Michael Myers is still a thing and everyone thinks she's a nutcase. And now in this one, she's got like what? 10 minutes, 15 minutes of screen time in an hour and 45-minute long movie? Not even? And now Tommy Doyle is the main character who was not in the last one? Like, again, that's the part to me where it's like, okay, lip service over anything actually related to a story, you know?
100%. Yeah, this movie was tonally very confused. You did a great example of how he stands over the boy in that one scene and lets him go, maybe because he saw something in him that reminded him of himself.
But again, in the next scene, he's like slicing and dicing
Really, the
someone.
only reason I can say that is because the Rob Zombie films do such a good job of showing you, and they're the most recent ones we watched, who he was to who he is. And this movie did nothing that was you would call writing, and so you can't really justify it in any regard. So yeah, I just think this movie is confused, very confused, and it's sad because it's probably, outside of the 90s films, the biggest blunder this franchise has, which is
Probably,
a bummer, because
easily.
this is what we're this is the
my
moment
question
we're
though for
living
you
in.
is,
and so you want it to be good.
let me ask you something about that though. When you talk about the 90s films with the blunders, are you talking about just H2O, or do you include Resurrection in there as well? Because you know I won't hear anything against Resurrection. That movie is amazingly terrible.
It's
but
more so
amazing
it's
at the
more
same
so
time.
H2O, but Resurrection is something. That's for sure. It's something.
No, the 90s ones are interesting because it's like Curse of Michael Myers, which is one of the best, then H2O, which is still
Obviously,
my
I wasn't
worst,
talking about
and
Curse.
then Curse is amazing. Like, I don't want to spoil too much, but we're going to use this last segment of the podcast in order to like kind of, give you guys some hype material for our Halloween rankings video, because honestly, that's the only thing that I'm still looking forward to after this movie, because like, oh man, this movie may have killed you talk about how this movie killed your anticipation for like just Halloween season in general. This movie just killed any anticipation that I have for the rest of this franchise. And then I'm like, oh fuck, we've got another one of these next year to sit through. I'm like, good God, will it ever end? Like, at the very least, we got a little bit of a brief reprieve after the second Rob Zombie one, and I actually liked that one. But now we got to sit through another one of these fucking things. Jesus Christ.
So let's get into our last segment
after
here.
This last
Where
one.
it stands in the overall Halloween franchise. Where does this movie stand, Dom?
Yeah. Oh, you're asking me?
Why not? It was your topic.
Well, again,
why not? Start us off.
All right. At the risk of spoiling our Halloween rankings for next week.
Just give them a tease.
I will say I had this movie ranked in a certain spot, and then it kind of lowered over the course of this conversation. I still don't hate it as much as H2O. If for nothing else than the fact that this movie gave me the one thing that H2O didn't, which was the kills. Because again, in a movie, in an hour and 20-minute long movie, not even the full 90 minutes and an 80-minute long movie, the fact that it takes an hour and 10 minutes into the movie for Michael Myers to kill anyone is ridiculous. I don't care what you're trying to say with that movie. That is ridiculous, absolutely. But what I will say is this movie, unlike the 2018 one, which I still don't like and which I still think is ranked relatively low, I think this one, again, all it does is pay lip service. It kind of adds nothing to the franchise really in a meaningful, substantial way that I think a majority of this franchise actually has. Like, say what you will about the sloppiness and inconsistency of the franchise and how it has very much been propelled by these producers that want to keep making these movies ultimately, even though Carpenter very, very much intended for the first Halloween movie to be a one-off standalone, which again, if you ask me, I think is probably still the best way to watch that first one. I know your thoughts on the original Halloween 2, and that movie is fun, but let's face it, at this point, after all these movies that we've sat through, the first one is really meant to be viewed as its own original thing. And at best, these new movies, again, can be viewed as lip service. And at worst, again, you just sat through this review. You just saw what we thought. So, again, I'll save the rest of my thoughts for Wednesday for the rankings video because, again, this rankings video I think I'm looking more forward to than our Fast and Furious rankings video that we did a couple months ago. But before we get out of here, what are your thoughts on where this ranks within the franchise?
Yeah, I mean, sorry guys, I'm going to have to repeat myself a bit here, but I think it's a big blunder. I think it might be the biggest stain on the resume of the Halloween franchise. It offered nothing, and all it did was waste my time. I really can't say anything more without being repetitive and just making for bad podcasting here. And I also don't want to spoil anything for our Halloween ranked because there will be surprises in there, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy that video. And I hope you enjoyed us ripping this movie apart because it deserves it. I'm just done checking in with what like the zeitgeist, aka like all of the industry leaders of film criticism think, because I just find that they're being led by the dollar behind closed doors. So I don't know what they're saying. I would assume that if they're saying that they liked this movie, then just whatever. You can support them if you want, but that's the reason I don't really support those type of people anymore. So yeah, I don't know, Dom. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, it's just not worth it. It's like they've burned us time and time again. They've consistently wasted our time over and over again. And they just show that, like, again, they very similar to a couple periods of beforehand, they don't have our best interests at heart. And they clearly have no idea where the pop culture interest is. Or maybe they do, because again, all their only job is to follow the dollar signs. And this movie had already a $50 million premiere opening weekend, which is insane considering, again, just shows that, like, again, brand IP recognition, and again, the fact that the horror genre is the last genre that can actually get people into theaters besides superhero movies. Like, this movie's a win. It's another Shang-Chi. It's another Shang-Chi. What is it that we are missing, Chris? Is it just a horror? Is it just the fact that it's a horror? Because again, this was not a horror movie for me. This was an exploitation movie. Gore fest is what this is. This felt more like an Eli Roth movie. I can't even say that this was a Rob Zombie movie. Again, it's just excess and gore for excess and gore's sake with a little bit of flimsy messaging in there, and that's about it. And like the way that they ended with the Judy Greer thing, and also there's the subplot with the other mental patient. Like, what was that? Like, I don't even know where that went as far as that goes.
Yeah,
that
like, made no sense.
We
to
were
me.
so
It
wrong.
It felt so
yeah, and then they end up dying
just,
anyways.
Yeah, what you're asking me? What was the question you asked?
Like, I don't even remember is the problem. I already forgot because fucking I want to forget this movie so goddamn badly.
Yeah, fair enough. I think we've said all we can say, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. So, final thoughts and star ratings. This movie sucked. I don't think it's. I haven't decided yet whether it's one of the worst of the year. Definitely, because again, my worst of the year is one of my most coveted lists. Definitely, and I know we don't like to talk too badly about movies on this podcast, but again, there are just been some this year. Again, this is I'm going to say it right now. 2021 has been the worst year for movies for me ever. And I don't say that with any doubt or skeptics and hesitation. And this is already coming off of the last couple of years, which have already been just so destructive and awful just for movies as an art form in general. Just like because of the mass over-commercialization and the steepness in IP and pop culture. But this is the worst between how they could have picked up with the amount of movies that got delayed from last year with COVID, how a lot of those movies turned out to be, how many of them actually turned out to be fun versus actually being substantive. And this is just the next addition to the list after how many movies is it now? Like, I've lost track. That's how bad this year has been. That's how awful so many of these movies have been. I originally gave this movie a 3.5, and I think that I was I think that I was just, on another lucid level when I did that, because this is not a good movie. This is not a good movie at all. Again, there's no cohesiveness here. I have no idea what it's trying to say. I can't even give McBride and David Gordon Green credit, because, again, the lip service thing just completely fell through over their attempt to just continue to make Michael as gory as humanly possible and have flimsy messaging in their movies ultimately. So I can't even give this movie anything really higher than 2 stars, and that's being nice. 2 out of 5, because I like the kills. The kills were awesome. That's about it.
Fair enough. Yeah, the only reason this movie gets any stars for me is because of the kills. I thought Michael Myers was fun as he always is, but everything else was just so pitiful. It's not my worst of the year, but it's going to be in my top 10 worst, and it won't be too close to the bottom just because of some of the other films we've had to watch, but it deserves to be close to the bottom, and my top 10 worst will be a list of all terrible movies. This is a 1-star film. I've said all I can say. I don't want to waste any more of the listeners' time. They've probably watched the movie, and so enough of their time has been wasted this week as it is.
Yes, absolutely. So that was it, people. That was our review of Halloween Kills, ultimately. But before we get out of here, we got a couple minutes left, so I just wanted to throw out a couple things. I meant to talk about this last week, and we ultimately didn't have time because we ended up talking a lot more about James Bond than I thought we did. But I wanted to talk about a couple movies that I ended up watching last week for New York Film Festival, which, again, these movies will get no advertisement. You will probably never hear of these movies. I don't even know if these movies are going to get Oscar appeal just because of the level of A24 movies that they are. But I wanted to talk about the 2 films that I watched at New York Film Festival last weekend real quick. And they were 2 absolutely beautiful films from 2 absolutely impeccable filmmakers who are probably 2 of my favorite working filmmakers right now, that being Mike Mills' Come On, Come On, and Sean Baker's Red Rocket. The first one that I watched on Sunday at noon was Mike Mills' Come On, Come On. It is his 3rd film after Beginners and 20th Century Women. It is a film that stars Joaquin Phoenix as an audio recorder for a radio station who goes around interviewing kids about kind of what their thoughts are on maturity and kind of real world issues and their thoughts just in general about the status of the world. But he doesn't do it in an in-your-face, kind of overly political way. He just does it in the sense of okay, you guys are eventually going to grow up and have a part in this world ultimately, and this constantly changing, crazy world. What do you think is going to happen? And he ends up ultimately having to take care of his nephew due to the fact that his sister is overseeing her husband, who's suffering from some sort of debilitating mental illness. The movie never actually explicitly states what it is. It's more than likely some form of schizophrenia, but throughout the film, it becomes very clear that the nephew, who is portrayed by newcomer Woody Norman, is suffering from an earlier version of that. But the way that the movie goes about it, in the sense of really kind of showing this bond that Joaquin Phoenix is able to form with his nephew as he brings him along on this journey. It's probably one of the most beautiful, heartwarming, just really good feeling journeys that I've seen in a while. The movie is shot in black and white. The movie's a love letter to New York, to New Orleans, to Los Angeles, and it's absolutely incredible. I would highly, highly recommend it. And then the other film that I watched is the 4th film from Sean Baker, whose recent installments include Tangerine and The Florida Project. The movie is a little bit of a comeback material for MTV and Scary Movie 2 star Simon Rex, who, again, was a guy who I had not even heard of before this movie. And the movie features Simon Rex as a washed-up porn star named Mikey Saber, who returns to his hometown of Texas after having very clearly run out of all of his options in L.A., and he returns to his hometown and kind of reunites with everyone there that knew him from back in the day. And it's kind of one of those, it's really interesting because the movie is a comedy, but it's also really, really dark and really, really messed up and has some really intense, kind of fucked up subject matter. And the way that Sean Baker, it's really interesting how Sean Baker is able to beg the question, how far are we willing to go to empathize with these terrible, terrible people that these anti-heroes kind of that we've grown to admire and want to watch so much because of how entertaining they could be. Because this character, throughout the course of the film, continues to show that he is just, what's the word? He is the opposite of the Midas touch. Everything that he touches turns to shit, and he destroys absolutely everything that he touches. but he is so enraptured in his own kind of, persona that he just elevates it above everything else. So again, it is a movie that I will be very interested to hear people's thoughts once it comes out. I think that this is going to be a very controversial movie. I'm going to be very interested to see if kind of the takes crowd, what their take on it is, as far as kind of how deep this movie goes. But it is one that I would definitely recommend just from a fascination level more than anything else. So those are the two movies that I watched at New York Film Festival, Come On, and Red Rocket. Both two of my favorite movies of the year. They're in my top 5 of the year, definitely. I would highly recommend them to anyone who has not watched them when they become available, either to watch in theaters or on streaming. And hopefully, Chris, I did a good job of giving you some hope for the future of movies outside of these god-awful, terrible blockbusters that we would watch this year.
I actually really look forward to seeing both of those films. They sound very interesting and right up my alley. A nice, refreshing break from just the monotony of what seems to be on the film side of things 2021, right? So, no, I'm glad you enjoyed yourself there, man. I think it's cool you go out and contribute to.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It's a good patronage.
Of course,
it's good patronage, man. I like it.
I have to. It's the last vestiges of what we love about movies. I have to.
Cool, man. Well, hey, we didn't like the movie, but I still think it was one hell of a podcast, and want to just thank everyone again for all their support through the Halloween First Time Watch series. If you already haven't, we have a first time video and a video up for every single installment in the Halloween IP, the Halloween franchise. Please go check them out. It would really mean a lot to us. We put a lot of time and effort into those videos, and I think they came out really great. And of course, the big shebang, the end-all be-all of our Shocktober Halloween event coming up this week, the rankings video where we're going to rank every movie, including Halloween Kills. So stick with us. It's not over yet, unfortunately. And, we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And Dom, you got anything else you want to tell the people?
Absolutely, people. Thanks once again for tuning in to another episode of the Talking TV Podcast. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Talking TV Podcast, and be sure to click the subscribe button, the like button, click the bell next to it. That way you guys get notified every time we put up new content. We've still got podcasts going throughout the rest of the year. We got 2 left for our Shocktober podcast reel. We got Halloween Kills in the middle. We got Dune. Finally, one of my most anticipated for the last 2 years, coming next week. And we're wrapping up October with Last Night in Soho before we wrap up the year in November and December. Chris, where can the good people find you?
Yeah, they can find me in the same exact place they can find our podcast, on Facebook, Instagram, and I'm also on Twitter at Christian Evanko. Evanko spelled Evanko. Hit that link in my bio if you wouldn't mind, and check out some of my music. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Google Music, and all the other places you would think you would go to listen to music. It's there. I would really appreciate it. And let me know what you think. Comment, subscribe, whatever the platform you choose to interact with allows. I'd love some feedback. And also I have another podcast. We're gearing up for a new season, a few more interviews. So check out Talking with Andrew and Chris. Talking spelled the same way we spell it here. And it's also through the link in my bio, and also available on all the same platforms that the Talking TV podcast is, that being Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, the whole 9. So I hope to see you guys there. This was a blast, a great episode. I hope you did not watch this movie in a theater. I hope you saw it on Peacock and saved yourself some money. And really,
if you watched it at
my
all.
biggest hope is that Dom gets back to his sarcastic Instagram and Facebook posts, so you guys can just enjoy it like I have in the past. So Dom, tell them where they can find that.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I don't know when I'll start posting again, but you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Movie Nerd Reviews. I don't even remember when the last time I posted was, but don't worry. I'll post something soon. Don't worry. And as always, again, continue to support this podcast because, again, it means the world to us that you guys just, continue to keep coming and showing the love and showing the support. So as always, remember, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.